The crystalline spires of Zephyria gleamed like frozen starlight against the twin moons overhead. Princess Lyrelii of the Veltharian Empire stood on her palace balcony, her iridescent skin shifting from deep purple to silver as emotions she couldn't name coursed through her. Below, in the palace courtyard, something impossible was happening. A single human soldier stood surrounded by 50 of her elite guard, their plasma weapons trained on his seemingly fragile form. He should have been dead. By every law of physics and biology her people understood, the primitive creature should have been reduced to ash the moment he set foot on their world. Zephyria's atmosphere contained enough ionized particles to kill most carbon-based life forms within minutes. Yet there he stood, breathing their toxic air as if it were nothing more than a gentle breeze. Captain Marcus Chun of the Terran Defense Corps hadn't come here to fight. The crash landing of his reconnaissance vessel 3 days ago had been an accident, a malfunction in the jump drive that had tore him from hyperspace and dumped him onto this alien world. His ship was debris now, scattered across the violet plains beyond the city. He had walked here expecting to die, hoping only to make contact before the environment claimed him. But death hadn't come. Instead, he found himself strangely invigorated by the alien atmosphere. His enhanced physiology, a product of humanity's recent genetic modifications to survive hostile worlds, had adapted faster than even Earth scientists had predicted. The ionized particles that should have been poison seemed to strengthen him instead. Lyrelii watched as her captain of guards, Theron, approached the human with a neural disruptor. The weapon was designed to scramble the nervous systems of any known life form. When he activated it directly against the human's temple, she expected to see the creature collapse. Instead, the human simply turned his head slightly, those strange blue eyes focusing on Theron with what looked almost like curiosity. "Your technology is impressive," Marcus said, his universal translator converting his words into the flowing tones of Veltharian. "But I'm afraid it won't work on me." The words sent a chill through every guard present. No species in the known galaxy was immune to neural disruption. It was considered the perfect, non-lethal weapon precisely because it worked on every sentient being they had ever encountered. The Veltharians had conquered 17 different species with such technology, building their empire on the foundation of superior weapons and tactics. Theron stepped back, his normally steady hands trembling as he raised his plasma rifle. "What manner of demon are you, human?" Marcus raised his hands slowly, palms forward in a gesture of peace. "Just a soldier who got lost. I mean you no harm." But even as he spoke those words, Lyrelii could see the truth that terrified her guards. This wasn't just immunity to their weapons. The human's presence here represented something far more significant. For 3,000 years, her people had been the apex predators of this galaxy. They had never encountered a species that could match their natural advantages. Their enhanced intellect, their resistance to most forms of energy weapons, their ability to survive in hostile environments. Yet here stood a being from a species they had dismissed as primitive, demonstrating abilities that surpassed their own. Intelligence reports on humans had described them as barely spacefaring, having only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. They were supposed to be confined to their small corner of the galaxy, struggling with basic colonization efforts. The human ship had been destroyed, but the wreckage told a different story. Lyrelii scientists had analyzed the debris and found technology that seemed impossibly advanced for such a young species. The jump drive alone used principles of space-time manipulation that Veltharian science was only beginning to understand. "Princess," Theron called up to her, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "What are your orders?" Lyrelii found herself unable to speak. She had trained her entire life to be a leader, to make quick decisions in the face of uncertainty. Her people looked to the royal family for strength and wisdom. But as she stared down at the human soldier, she felt something she had never experienced before, a mixture of fear and fascination that left her breathless. The human looked up then, those alien blue eyes meeting hers across the distance. In that moment, she saw something that shattered every assumption she had ever held about his species. Intelligence blazed there, yes, but also something else. Compassion, understanding. Despite being surrounded by weapons and facing almost certain death, he looked at her not with hatred or fear, but with what seemed almost like recognition. "I would very much like to speak with you, Princess," he called out, his voice carrying clearly in the ionized air. "I believe our peoples have much to discuss." The simple statement sent ripples of shock through her guards, but Lyralii felt something else entirely. For reasons she couldn't explain, she believed him. This human, this impossible being who should not exist, was offering her something her empire had never encountered, an equal to negotiate with. The implications terrified her. If humans possessed such abilities, what did that mean for Veltharian supremacy? But beneath the fear, another emotion stirred, one that would change the course of galactic history against the advice of her entire council. Princess Lyralii ordered the human brought to the throne room. The massive chamber, carved from a single crystal formation and decorated with trophies from a dozen conquered worlds, had never hosted a being quite like Captain Marcus Chun. He walked between her guards without restraints, though energy fields hummed around him constantly. The guards had given up trying to find conventional means to contain him after their neural dampening cells had simply made him more alert. Instead, they relied on a complex web of gravitational distortions that should have crushed him into paste, but which he seemed to navigate as easily as walking through water. Lyralii's father, Emperor Veloth, sat upon the throne of stars, his ancient form radiating the cold dignity that had kept their empire stable for millennia. Beside him stood the military council, their faces showing various degrees of fear and hostility. Only Lyralii seemed truly curious about their unexpected guest. "Speak, human," the Emperor commanded, his voice echoing through the crystal chamber. "Explain how you have come to violate our sacred world, and why we should not reduce you and your entire species to cosmic dust." Marcus took a step forward, seemingly unbothered by the implicit threat. "Your Majesty, I come here by accident, but perhaps not by chance. My ship's navigational systems failed during what should have been a routine survey mission. When I analyzed the malfunction, I discovered something interesting." He gestured, and the universal translator projected a holographic display above his palm. The technology was clearly human in origin, but it operated with a sophistication that made the Veltharian scientists murmur among themselves. "Our jump drives don't actually fail randomly. They're designed with quantum entanglement safeguards that automatically route disabled ships toward the nearest technologically advanced civilization. My ship brought me here because your empire represents the highest concentration of developed technology in this sector." The implication hung in the air like a blade. Human technology could automatically locate and navigate to Veltharian space, something that should have been impossible given their supposed primitive status. "You speak of survey missions," interjected General Kairos, the Emperor's chief military advisor. "Survey missions for what purpose?" Marcus smiled, an expression that seemed to unsettle the assembled aliens despite its apparent friendliness. "We've been mapping the galaxy's political structures, preparing for contact." "Preparing for invasion, you mean?" Kairos snarled. "No, general. Preparing for coexistence." The word struck the throne room like a thunderbolt. Coexistence was not a concept the Veltharian Empire recognized. Their expansion had always followed the same pattern. Identify resources, deploy overwhelming force, subjugate or eliminate resistance, incorporate useful elements into the empire. Lyralii found herself leaning forward, studying the human with growing fascination. Everything about him challenged her understanding of how the universe worked. His species should have been easily conquered, yet here he stood, discussing galactic politics as if humans had any right to a seat at that table. "Captain Shun," she said, her voice cutting through the rising murmur of conversation. "What exactly do humans want from the galaxy?" Those blue eyes fixed on her again, and she felt that same strange flutter of recognition. We want what every intelligent species wants, Princess. The freedom to explore, to grow, to find our place among the stars. But we also want something else, which is, we want our neighbors to thrive alongside us. The statement drew derisive laughter from several council members, but Lyralii noticed that Marcus didn't seem offended. If anything, he looked almost sad, as if he had expected such a reaction, but hoped for better. You find the concept amusing, he observed. But consider this. Humanity has achieved faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation that surpasses your own, and biological enhancements that make us nearly immune to most forms of attack. We've mapped your empire's territories and analyzed your military capabilities. If we wanted conquest, would we send one unarmed soldier to make contact? The throne room fell silent. Emperor Veloth's expression had shifted from dismissive arrogance to something approaching wariness. What are you suggesting, human? I'm suggesting that humanity has already won, Your Majesty. We've achieved technological and biological superiority while you weren't even aware we existed. But instead of using that advantage to dominate, we're choosing to offer partnership. Marcus gestured again, and the holographic display shifted to show a star map. Red markers indicated Veltharian territory, while blue markers showed human space. The blue territories were smaller in number, but strategically positioned around key hyperspace junctions and resource nodes. We've been watching your empire for 50 years, he continued. We've studied your expansion patterns, your military doctrines, your social structures. We could have disrupted your supply lines at any time, turned your conquered species against you, or simply rendered your homeworld uninhabitable from a distance. Instead, we waited. Waited for what? Lyralii asked, though she was beginning to understand. For you to be ready for a different kind of relationship. Your empire is powerful, but it's also fragile. Ruling through fear and force requires constant vigilance, constant expansion. It's unsustainable in the long term. We're offering you an alternative. General Kairos stepped forward, his hand moving to his sidearm. You dare lecture us about governance, primitive? Marcus turned to face the general, and for the first time, Lyralii saw something dangerous flicker in those blue eyes. General, I should point out that your weapon hasn't been functional since I entered this room. Neither have any of the others. Kairos drew his plasma pistol and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. Around the throne room, other guards checked their weapons with growing alarm. Every single energy weapon in the chamber had been silently disabled. Ow! Emperor Veloth demanded. Humans have learned to manipulate electromagnetic fields in ways your science hasn't discovered yet. It's a passive ability triggered by stress responses. When your guards became agitated, their weapons automatically deactivated. Marcus looked around the room, and Lyralii realized that despite being surrounded by hostile aliens, he remained completely calm. Not because he was stupid or naive, but because he genuinely felt no threat from them. This is why I'm here, he continued, to demonstrate that humanity doesn't seek to destroy you. We seek to elevate you, to offer you technologies and perspectives that could make your empire stronger and more stable than you ever imagined possible. He turned back to Lyralii, and she felt her breath catch as those alien eyes met hers once more. But first, we need to establish trust. And trust, Princess, must begin with honesty. The private audience chamber was smaller than the throne room, but no less magnificent. Crystalline walls captured and refracted the light of Zephyria's twin suns, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floor. Princess Lyralii sat across from Captain Marcus Chun, a low table of carved starwood between them. For the first time since his arrival, they were alone. My father agreed to this meeting against his better judgment, she said, her voice carrying notes of uncertainty that hadn't been present before the full court. He believes you've somehow compromised our security systems through technological means we don't understand. Marcus accepted the cup of liquid she offered him, a traditional gesture of hospitality among her people. The fact that he could consume Veltharian refreshments without harm had been yet another surprise for her scientists. He's not entirely wrong, Marcus admitted, but it's not what you think. Human technology isn't more advanced because we're inherently superior engineers. It's more advanced because we've had different teachers. Lyraliai's skin shifted through several colors, a sign of deep concentration among her species. Teachers, Princess, how much do you know about the galaxy's history before your empire's expansion? The records speak of primitive civilizations, most of which destroyed themselves before achieving spaceflight. The few that survived were too weak to resist our expansion. We encountered no species that posed a genuine challenge until... She paused, realization dawning. Until now. Marcus nodded. The official history your empire teaches is incomplete. There were advanced civilizations in this galaxy long before the Veltharians achieved interstellar travel. They didn't destroy themselves, and they weren't conquered. They chose to withdraw. He gestured, and the familiar holographic display appeared between them. But this time, the star map showed different markers, ancient symbols representing civilizations that existed thousands of years ago. The ethereals, the crystalline collective, the symphonic union. Each of these species achieved technological advancement far beyond what either humans or Veltharians possess today. But they also learned something that your empire hasn't discovered yet, which was that true power isn't the ability to conquer or destroy. It's the ability to nurture and protect. These ancient civilizations didn't disappear. They evolved beyond the need for physical territory or material resources. They became something else entirely. Lyraliai studied the display with growing fascination. The ancient territories formed intricate patterns across the galaxy, spaces between the current political boundaries that she had always assumed were simply empty. They're still out there, Marcus continued. Watching, waiting, occasionally intervening when younger species show promise. 50 years ago, they made contact with humanity. Why humans? Why not us? The question hung in the air, and Lyraliai found herself genuinely afraid of the answer. Her empire had prided itself on being the pinnacle of galactic civilization. The idea that they had been found wanting by entities they hadn't even known existed was deeply unsettling. Because humans asked the right question, Marcus said gently, when we achieved faster-than-light travel and began exploring the galaxy, we didn't ask how we could conquer it. We asked how we could join it. He leaned forward slightly, his expression earnest. The ethereals have been testing species for millennia, Princess. They watch how civilizations develop, how they treat others, how they respond to power. Most species fail the test. They become consumed by conquest, by the need to dominate, and expand until they either destroy themselves or stagnate into irrelevance. And humans pass this test. We're still taking it. Every choice we make, every interaction with other species, is part of an ongoing evaluation. The reason I'm here, talking to you, instead of delivering an ultimatum, is because the ethereals believe your people might still pass as well. Lyraliai felt her skin shifting through rapid color changes, her emotional control slipping as the implications crashed over her. You're saying our entire empire, everything we've built, is being judged by entities we never knew existed? I'm saying you have an opportunity, Marcus corrected. The Veltharian Empire doesn't have to fall, but it does have to change. He stood and walked to one of the crystal windows, gazing out at the sprawling city below. Your people are remarkable, Princess. Your scientists, your artists, your philosophers. They've created wonders that deserve to endure for millennia. But your expansion has been driven by fear rather than curiosity, by the need to control rather than the desire to understand. Lyraliai joined him at the window, close enough that she could feel the strange warmth that seemed to radiate from his skin. Up close, she could see that his eyes weren't simply blue, but contained flecks of gold that seemed to shift in the light. What would you have us do? Simply abandon our territories? Release our subject species to chaos? Help them, Marcus said simply. Instead of ruling through fear, guide them through wisdom. Share technology instead of hoarding it. Form alliances instead of demanding submission. The council would never agree to such changes. My father believes strength comes only through dominance. Marcus turned to face her, and she found herself caught in that intense blue gaze once again. What do you believe, princess? The question struck her like a physical blow. Throughout her life, she had been trained to think in terms of imperial policy, strategic advantage, dynastic succession. No one had ever asked her what she personally believed was right. I believe, she said slowly, that I've spent my entire life watching my people become something we weren't meant to be. We have the capacity for great beauty, great wisdom. But our fear of being conquered has made us into conquerors ourselves. Fear is natural, Marcus said. Every species experiences it when they first venture into the broader galaxy. But how a species chooses to deal with that fear determines their ultimate fate. He moved closer, and Lyralii felt her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with political implications or galactic consequences. There was something about this human, this impossible being who spoke of peace while demonstrating capabilities that could destroy her world, that called to something deep within her. The ethereals didn't choose humans because we were perfect, he continued. They chose us because we were willing to admit our imperfections and work to overcome them. They're offering the same opportunity to your people, princess. But the choice has to come from within your empire, not be imposed from without. And if we refuse, if my father and the council decide that change is too dangerous. Marcus's expression grew sad, though his voice remained gentle. Then, humanity will withdraw our offer of partnership. We'll join the ethereals in their distant realms and wait for the next species to show promise. Your empire will continue its expansion until it encounters something it cannot conquer. And then, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Lyralii understood the inevitable result of an empire built on force meeting a superior force. You're asking me to betray everything I've been taught to believe, she whispered. No, Marcus replied, his hand reaching out to briefly touch hers, sending an electric shock through her entire being. I'm asking you to become everything you were meant to be. In that moment, staring into those alien eyes that somehow saw her more clearly than any of her own people ever had, Princess Lyralii of the Veltharian Empire felt her world shift on its axis. This human soldier represented more than just a diplomatic opportunity or a military threat. He represented the possibility of transformation, of becoming something greater than what she had ever dared to imagine. The question was whether she had the courage to embrace that possibility. The emergency session of the High Council convened at dawn, the crystalline chamber filled with urgent whispers and barely controlled panic. Princess Lyralii entered to find her father deep in conversation with General Kairos and Admiral Thessarian, their faces grave with the weight of the intelligence reports scattered across the central table. Captain Marcus Chun had been confined to the palace's most secure quarters, though everyone present understood that the confinement was largely symbolic. If the human chose to leave, their technology couldn't stop him. The real question was what his continued presence meant for the Empire's future. The outer reconnaissance fleets have confirmed it, Admiral Thessarian announced as the council members took their seats. Human vessels have been detected at 17 different strategic points along our borders. They're not moving aggressively, but their positions would allow them to cut our supply lines and communication networks within hours if they chose to act. Emperor Veloth's expression remained stoic, but Lyralii could see the tension in her father's posture. How many ships? That's the problem, Your Majesty. We can detect their presence through gravitational anomalies, but our sensors can't get accurate readings on their numbers or capabilities. They're using some form of cloaking technology that renders them effectively invisible to our detection systems. General Kairos slammed his fist on the table. This proves the humans' words were lies. They speak of coexistence while positioning a fleet for invasion. Or, Lorelei interjected, drawing sharp looks from around the table. They're demonstrating that they could have attacked us at any time, but chose not to. Exactly as Captain Chen described. The general turned his hostile gaze on her. Princess, with respect, you've spent too much time listening to the creature's propaganda. We should execute him immediately and prepare for siege. And accomplish what? She challenged. If his people possess the capabilities he's demonstrated, killing their envoy will only confirm their suspicions that we're too aggressive to be trusted with advanced technology. Emperor Valoth raised a hand for silence. What does the human want, Lorelei? You've spoken with him privately. What are his true objectives? Lorelei felt the weight of every gaze in the room, but she also remembered the feeling of Marcus's hand touching hers, the sincerity in his alien eyes when he spoke of transformation and possibility. He wants us to choose, Father, to decide what kind of civilization we want to be going forward. Choose what exactly? Whether we want to continue expanding through conquest or whether we're willing to explore a different path. One based on cooperation instead of dominance. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Minister Zorath, the Empire's chief strategist, finally spoke. Princess, what you're describing would require fundamental changes to our entire governmental structure. Our economy is based on tribute from conquered worlds. Our military doctrine assumes the subjugation of inferior species. You're talking about abandoning everything that makes us Veltharian. No, Lorelei said firmly. I'm talking about becoming truly Veltharian. Before we became conquerors, we were explorers, scientists, artists. We built this empire because we were afraid of being conquered ourselves. But what if that fear no longer served us? Admiral Thessarian leaned forward. Princess, even if we wanted to consider such changes, the logistics would be impossible. We control over 200 worlds across 17 sectors. Releasing them to self-governance would create chaos on an unprecedented scale. Captain Chen mentioned that his people have been studying our empire for 50 years, Lorelei replied. They understand our governmental structures better than we assumed. Perhaps they also have insights into how transformation could be managed without catastrophic disruption. General Kairos laughed bitterly. You want us to ask our potential conquerors for advice on how to dismantle our own defenses? Before Lorelei could respond, a soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry to the council chamber. The massive doors opened to reveal Captain Marcus Chun, walking calmly between two guards who looked distinctly uncomfortable with their assignment. I apologize for the interruption, he said, his translator rendering his words informal court Veltharian. But I thought you might have questions that I could help answer. Emperor Valoth studied the human with calculating eyes. How did you escape your confinement? Marcus smiled, that unsettling human expression. I didn't escape, Your Majesty. I asked if I could attend your council session, and my guards agreed that it was a reasonable request. Every Veltharian in the room turned to stare at the two guards, who shifted uncomfortably. He made compelling arguments. One of them mumbled. What arguments could possibly convince trained soldiers to abandon their orders? General Kairos demanded. I asked them what they hoped their children would inherit from their service to the Empire. Marcus replied simply. They gave very thoughtful answers. The implications of his statement rippled through the council. Somehow, this human had convinced Imperial guards to abandon their protocols simply by engaging them in philosophical conversation. You're using some form of mental manipulation, Admiral Thessarian accused. No, I'll admit it. I'm using curiosity and respect, two qualities that seem to be in short supply in this room. The casual criticism drew angry murmurs from several council members, but Emperor Valoth raised a hand for silence. Speak, human. What is it you truly want from us? Marcus stepped forward, his presence somehow commanding attention despite his lack of weapons or obvious authority. I want you to consider a demonstration, Your Majesty. Something that will show you what cooperation between our species could accomplish. What kind of demonstration? Your empire includes several worlds that have suffered ecological collapse due to industrial exploitation. The fourth planet in the Corvani system, for example. Your scientists have written it off as uninhabitable. Minister Zorith nodded grimly. Corvani 4 was strip-mined for rare minerals until the atmospheric processors failed. The surface is now toxic to most forms of life. Human terraforming technology could restore that world within 6 months, Marcus said. Not just to habitability, but to a condition better than it was before exploitation began. We could demonstrate this process on Corvani 4 with full transparency so your scientists can observe and learn from our methods. The offer hung in the air like a challenge. Lyralii could see the conflict on her father's face as he weighed the potential benefits against the risks of allowing human technology to operate within Imperial territory. And in exchange, the Emperor asked, "No exchange required. Consider it a gift, offered in the spirit of future partnership." General Kairos scoffed. "Nothing is free, human. What hidden price will we pay for this restoration?" Marcus turned to face the general directly, and, for a moment, Lyralii glimpsed something dangerous in those blue eyes. "The only price, General, would be the realization that your current approach to governing conquered worlds is unnecessarily destructive, that there are better ways to manage resources and populations." "You mean we would be expected to apply your methods to other worlds in our empire? You would be expected to make your own choices based on demonstrated results," Marcus corrected. "If our methods prove superior, you might choose to adopt them. If not, you're free to continue as you have." Emperor Valoth exchanged glances with his advisors, then focused his attention back on the human. "And if we refuse this demonstration, then I return to my ship and report to my superiors that the Veltharian Empire is not yet ready for partnership. The offer will remain open, but active engagement will cease." "You mean your fleets will withdraw?" Marcus nodded. "Completely. You'll have perhaps another century to develop your civilization before the next evaluation." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Another species, possibly the mysterious ethereals Marcus had mentioned, would eventually make their own judgment about Veltharian civilization. And that judgment might be far less generous than humanity's offer of partnership. Lyralii found herself holding her breath as she watched her father weigh the decision that would determine not just their empire's future, but potentially the fate of every species under Veltharian rule. The choice between evolution and extinction had never been starker 6 months later. Princess Lyralii stood on the observation deck of the Imperial flagship as it approached Corvani 4. The world that had once been a scar across space now gleamed like a jewel beneath its restored atmosphere. Rolling green continents stretched between crystalline blue oceans, while swirling cloud formations painted elegant patterns across the rehabilitated sky. The transformation had exceeded every prediction. Human terraforming technology hadn't simply restored the planet's ecology. It had elevated it to a paradise that surpassed the world's original state. More importantly, the process had been completely transparent, with Veltharian scientists monitoring and recording every technique used. Captain Marcus Chun stood beside her, no longer wearing the simple uniform of a lost scout, but the formal dress of a human diplomatic envoy. The relationship between their species had evolved rapidly once Emperor Valoth had approved the demonstration project. Trade agreements had followed, then cultural exchanges, and finally, the framework for a formal alliance that would reshape the entire galactic political landscape. "Your father seems pleased with the results," Marcus observed, gesturing toward where Emperor Valoth stood in deep conversation with Dr. Sarah Kim, humanity's chief xenobiologist. Lyralii smiled, an expression that had become much more frequent since the humans had arrived. "Pleased is an understatement. The economic potential alone has convinced half the Imperial Council that cooperation is more profitable than conquest. And the other half? They're coming around." General Kairos actually requested assignment to the joint military exercises scheduled for next month. He wants to understand how human and Veltharian tactical doctrines might complement each other. Marcus chuckled, a sound that still sent pleasant shivers through Lyralii's enhanced nervous system. Over the past months, she had found herself increasingly drawn to this remarkable human who had casually dismantled her empire's fundamental assumptions about power and governance. "I have to admit," he said, "when I first crashed on your world, I didn't expect things to progress this smoothly." "You mean you didn't plan to completely revolutionize our civilization in under a year?" "The revolution was always yours to make, Princess. Humans simply provided a catalyst." Lyralii turned to face him fully, studying the alien features that had become so familiar and yet remained fascinating. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer." "Always. That first day, when you looked up at me from the courtyard, did you know what would happen between us?" Marcus considered the question carefully, his expression growing thoughtful. "I knew that contact between our species was inevitable. I hoped it would be peaceful. But what happened between us specifically?" He paused, those blue eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her skin flush through several color changes. "That was completely unexpected and completely wonderful." The admission sent warmth spreading through her entire body. Over the months of diplomatic negotiations and joint scientific projects, their professional relationship had gradually evolved into something far more personal. They had spent countless hours discussing philosophy, sharing stories of their respective worlds, and exploring the fascinating differences and surprising similarities between their species. "The ethereals must be pleased with the progress," she said, though her mind was focused less on ancient alien evaluators and more on the way Marcus's hand had come to rest on the observation deck railing just inches from her own. "According to the latest reports, they're impressed. Humanity's first successful species uplift is apparently proceeding ahead of all projected timelines." Lyralii felt a momentary chill. "Uplift? Is that how your people see this? As raising a primitive species to your level?" Marcus immediately shook his head. "Poor choice of words. Integration, maybe. Partnership. The ethereals don't see it as one species being elevated by another, but as two civilizations choosing to grow together." He turned to face her more directly, and she could see sincerity radiating from his expression. "Lyralii, humans didn't save the Veltharian Empire. We simply showed you possibilities that were always within your reach. Everything your people have accomplished in the past 6 months, all the changes in policy and governance and scientific approach, those came from Veltharian choices. Choices influenced by human guidance. Choices informed by human perspective," he corrected. "There's a difference. Your father could have rejected everything we offered. Your council could have voted to maintain the old ways. You could have decided that conquest was preferable to cooperation. But we didn't, because fundamentally, your species believes in growth and learning rather than stagnation and control. That's why the ethereals flagged you as candidates for partnership in the first place." Lyralii felt her skin shifting through the deep purples and golds that indicated profound emotional response. "Marcus, what happens now? When the formal alliance is signed and our civilizations are officially partners, then we explore the galaxy together. Your people's mastery of energy manipulation combined with human quantum mechanics could unlock technologies that neither species could develop alone. We share knowledge, resources, perspectives. We grow stronger together than either could separately." I meant what happens with us. The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications that went far beyond political alliances and technological exchange. Marcus stepped closer, close enough that she could feel that strange warmth that seemed to radiate from human skin. "That depends on what you want to happen," he said softly. Lyralii looked out at the restored world spinning slowly below them, then back at this remarkable human who had accidentally fallen into her life and transformed everything about it. "I want to see the galaxy the way you see it," she said. "Not as territories to be conquered or resources to be exploited, but as wonders to be explored. I want to learn how many other species are out there waiting for contact. I want to meet the ethereals and understand what they've learned in their millennia of existence." She paused, gathering courage for what she really wanted to say. "And I want to do all of that with you." Marcus's smile was radiant, an expression of pure joy that transformed his entire face. Princess Lorelei of the Veltharian Empire, would you consider accepting assignment as your people's first ambassador to humanity? I thought you'd never ask. He laughed, reaching out to take her hand in his. The touch sent electricity racing through her nervous system, but it was accompanied by something else, a sense of rightness, of possibility, of a future that stretched beyond anything she had ever dared to imagine. There's something else, Marcus said, his expression growing more serious. The Ethereals have extended an invitation. They want to meet with representatives from both our species to formally welcome the Alliance into the galactic community. We'd be the first newly integrated civilizations they've acknowledged in over 1,000 years. Lorelei felt her pulse quicken. When? Next month. The rendezvous point is in the Andromeda Transition Zone, where space-time is flexible enough for their ships to manifest in our dimensional framework. Our ships. The journey requires both human quantum drives and Veltharian energy manipulation. Another opportunity for our peoples to work together. As if summoned by their conversation, Emperor Valoth approached with Dr. Kim, both of them wearing expressions of satisfied accomplishment. Princess, Captain Chun, the Emperor said formally, though Lorelei could detect warmth beneath his official tone. The final terraforming reports have been completed. Corvani 4 is ready for recolonization, and the techniques demonstrated here can be applied to dozens of other damaged worlds throughout our territory. Your Majesty, Marcus replied with a respectful bow. Humanity is honored to have participated in this restoration. We look forward to many more such collaborations. As do we, Captain. As do we. Emperor Valoth's gaze shifted between his daughter and the human diplomat, and Lorelei saw understanding dawn in her father's ancient eyes. Princess, he said carefully, I believe you have some decisions to make about your future role in the Empire. Lorelei looked at Marcus, then at the restored world below, then at her father who had chosen transformation over tradition, growth over stagnation. I believe I do, Father, and I believe I've already made them. As the Imperial flagship prepared for its journey back to Zephyria, carrying news that would forever change the balance of galactic power, Princess Lorelei stood hand in hand with the human soldier who had accidentally crashed into her world and intentionally revolutionized it. Behind them, Corvani 4 continued its slow rotation, a living symbol of what two species could accomplish when they chose cooperation over conquest, understanding over domination, love over fear. The galaxy had just become a much more interesting place. The crystalline spires of Zephyria gleamed like frozen starlight against the twin moons overhead. Princess Lorelei of the Veltharian Empire stood on her palace balcony, her iridescent skin shifting from deep purple to silver as emotions she couldn't name coursed through her. Below, in the palace courtyard, something impossible was happening. A single human soldier stood surrounded by 50 of her elite guard, their plasma weapons trained on his seemingly fragile form. He should have been dead. By every law of physics and biology her people understood, the primitive creature should have been reduced to ash the moment he set foot on their world. Zephyria's atmosphere contained enough ionized particles to kill most carbon-based life forms within minutes. Yet there he stood, breathing their toxic air as if it were nothing more than a gentle breeze. Captain Marcus Chun of the Terran Defense Corps hadn't come here to fight. The crash landing of his reconnaissance vessel 3 days ago had been an accident, a malfunction in the jump drive that had torn him from hyperspace and dumped him onto this alien world. His ship was debris now, scattered across the violet plains beyond the city. He had walked here expecting to die, hoping only to make contact before the environment claimed him. But death hadn't come. Instead, he found himself strangely invigorated by the alien atmosphere. His enhanced physiology, a product of humanity's recent genetic modifications to survive hostile worlds, had adapted faster than even Earth scientists had predicted. The ionized particles that should have been poison seemed to strengthen him instead. Lyralii watched as her captain of guards, Theron, approached the human with a neural disruptor. The weapon was designed to scramble the nervous systems of any known life form. When he activated it directly against the human's temple, she expected to see the creature collapse. Instead, the human simply turned his head slightly, those strange blue eyes focusing on Theron with what looked almost like curiosity. "Your technology is impressive," Marcus said, his universal translator converting his words into the flowing tones of Veltharion. "But I'm afraid it won't work on me." The words sent a chill through every guard present. No species in the known galaxy was immune to neural disruption. It was considered the perfect, non-lethal weapon precisely because it worked on every sentient being they had ever encountered. The Veltharians had conquered 17 different species with such technology, building their empire on the foundation of superior weapons and tactics. Theron stepped back, his normally steady hands trembling as he raised his plasma rifle. "What manner of demon are you, human?" Marcus raised his hands slowly, palms forward in a gesture of peace. "Just a soldier who got lost. I mean you no harm." But even as he spoke those words, Lyralii could see the truth that terrified her guards. This wasn't just immunity to their weapons. The human's presence here represented something far more significant. For 3,000 years, her people had been the apex predators of this galaxy. They had never encountered a species that could match their natural advantages. Their enhanced intellect, their resistance to most forms of energy weapons, their ability to survive in hostile environments. Yet here stood a being from a species they had dismissed as primitive, demonstrating abilities that surpassed their own. Intelligence reports on humans had described them as barely spacefaring, having only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. They were supposed to be confined to their small corner of the galaxy, struggling with basic colonization efforts. The human ship had been destroyed, but the wreckage told a different story. Lyralii scientists had analyzed the debris and found technology that seemed impossibly advanced for such a young species. The jump drive alone used principles of space-time manipulation that Veltharian science was only beginning to understand. "Princess," Theron called up to her, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "What are your orders?" Lyralii found herself unable to speak. She had trained her entire life to be a leader, to make quick decisions in the face of uncertainty. Her people looked to the royal family for strength and wisdom. But as she stared down at the human soldier, she felt something she had never experienced before, a mixture of fear and fascination that left her breathless. The human looked up then, those alien blue eyes meeting hers across the distance. In that moment, she saw something that shattered every assumption she had ever held about his species. Intelligence blazed there, yes, but also something else. Compassion, understanding. Despite being surrounded by weapons and facing almost certain death, he looked at her not with hatred or fear, but with what seemed almost like recognition. "I would very much like to speak with you, Princess," he called out, his voice carrying clearly in the ionized air. "I believe our peoples have much to discuss." The simple statement sent ripples of shock through her guards, but Lyralii felt something else entirely. For reasons she couldn't explain, she believed him. This human, this impossible being who should not exist, was offering her something her empire had never encountered, an equal to negotiate with. The implications terrified her. If humans possessed such abilities, what did that mean for Veltharian supremacy? But beneath the fear, another emotion stirred, one that would change the course of galactic history.